Favorite thing about being a dad?
When my kids staying outside and wait for me to get home from work, and whenever I get out of the vehicle, they yell, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy."
A young dad tragically won't be coming home to his family because he was shot and killed in a Target parking lot in an apparent dispute over a parking space. Has the whole world gone mad? We're taking a closer look at what we know so far in this truly terrible case and what police are still trying to figure out. And the most important question, why did this happen? Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. By the way, we've been covering this story from the very beginning. If there are more updates in this, we will continue to try to bring them to you. And one of the reasons that we can do that is because of the support that we get from Morgan & Morgan, our sponsor, America's largest personal injury law firm, a firm with over 1,000 attorneys who have recovered, by the way, $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. In the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000. Out in Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million. That is 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan, they make it easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC Sidebar. You can click the link below, or you can scan the QR code on screen. You want to talk about senseless? A husband, a father of three, was gunned down in a parking lot of a Target store in Savannah, Georgia last weekend after an alleged confrontation over a parking space. We're talking about a fight over a parking space. That's what's being reported. This shooting turned a normal Sunday afternoon into a nightmare, with police having to cordon off the lot with crime scene tape, and they took a suspect into custody. We're talking about the death of 33-year-old Matthew Traywick. He worked for a car dealership, Vaden Automotive, in Savannah. He was in the lot of the Target when he allegedly got into some kind of dispute with another man, 30-year-old Tyler Linn. That encounter somehow escalated into shots being fired and Matthew ending up bleeding on the ground. On Sunday, January 4th at around 4 p.m., these frantic calls just started coming in. Savannah Police, they tweeted that they were responding to a shooting and then followed it up with this information, quote, SPD responded to the 14,000 block of Abercorn. Upon arrival, an adult male was found suffering from a gunshot wound. He was taken to the hospital but succumbed to his injuries. An adult male suspect was taken into custody. Please call 912-234-2020 or use the app if you have info. Now, you had news outlet WSAV report that the suspected shooter, so Linn, stayed at the scene and was arrested. That's an important detail if true. Chatham County court records show that he has been charged with aggravated assault and murder. A Fort Stewart spokesperson told WSAV that Linn was in the Army from August 2015 to October 2023. Now, he was reportedly stationed at Hunter Army Airfield in nearby Hinesville, Georgia, and worked as an unmanned aircraft systems repairer for the last 2 years of his Army career. He had the rank of specialist, according to WSAV's reporting, but it should be noted he was never deployed. Army officials, though, they were unable to tell the outlet what sort of discharge that he received when he left the Army, whether it was honorable or otherwise, so that is a question that needs to be evaluated. But we have the city's mayor, Van Johnson, who provided some insight into all this. Shared, quote, "Today our community was shaken by a tragic act of violence in a place where people should feel safe, a parking lot at the Target on Abercorn Street. The Savannah Police Department responded to reports of a shooting that occurred during an alleged argument over a parking dispute. An adult male was struck and later died from his injuries. We have the suspect in custody and the investigation remains active. Our hearts go out to the family and loved ones of the victim. No disagreement over a parking space or anything else should ever end in the loss of life. This needless, unnecessary violence underscores the daily pain felt by families across our city and the urgency of our collective work to reduce gun violence and strengthen community safety." Johnson continued, "This tragedy is a reminder that we must redouble our efforts in violence prevention, conflict resolution, and community support services. Let us honor the life lost today by committing to a safer, more compassionate Savannah." Savannah Police, they have released very few details about the shooting, the circumstances of the shooting, the timeline, the events, other than to say that Traywick Matthew Traywick was rushed to the hospital. This is where he died. But I will say that the community surrounding Savannah has been abuzz with this news. We're seeing this a lot online. For example, you had a person who posted on Reddit on Sunday saying they saw this altercation. We do want to say this is just what this person claims they saw. The specific details have not been confirmed by authorities, but that user wrote under the title, "Shooting at Target Southside. Heavy police presence. Some guy shot someone 3 times in the chest. He was with his daughter. He was bleeding out on the ground while she was begging him to keep breathing and not die. The guy that shot him just took the magazine out of the gun, sat it on his vehicle, and stood to the side waiting for the cops to show up. Avoid the area. I need a drink." Yet another user in the comments who clarified that it was Matthew's wife, McGeough, not one of his children, that was trying to save him. That person says the couple's 3 children were actually inside the car. Again, to be clear, police haven't confirmed this. What we can say is that's true. If any of this is true, it's absolutely horrific. But then you have another person online who purports to have known the suspect or known of him. They wrote, "Linn has told many stories about cutting people off and jamming his brakes on them in traffic. He's followed people who've pissed him off driving and even physically confronted them. I know he struck another vehicle while road raging and later claims to have made a police report after the fact, so it seemed he wasn't the aggressor. He also has a history of violence off the road. All these things will come to light. God rest the victim's soul, and all prayers for those left behind in this senseless crime." Again, Savannah Police haven't officially confirmed any of this information. We don't even know if this person or these people have been interviewed by police. But if it's true, it's an interesting perspective. And if it's true, I will also say, in these kinds of cases, sometimes that evidence of past episodes, past allegedly aggressive behavior, that can maybe come in to show a pattern, to show about what happened here. Now, I should also tell you, by the way, we weren't able to find any other court records related to Linn in Chatham County's online records. So again, we're kind of limited in what we know. But here's what we do know. Matthew's employer, Vaden Nissan of Savannah, and by the way, Vaden Automotive might have several dealerships, but they were one of the first to identify him as the victim, posting a photo of his family, writing, "We're heartbroken by the loss of Matthew Traywick. Matthew was a valued member of the Vaden family for years. Our thoughts and prayers are with his wife, children, and those closest to him during this incredibly difficult time. We ask for privacy for his family and our team as we grieve this tragic loss." And this past Father's Day, by the way, Vaden Automotive, they posted a video of Matthew talking about his 3 kids. Take a look.
What does a dad actually want for Father's Day?
Peace and quiet.
Favorite thing about being a dad?
When my kids staying outside and wait for me to get home from work, and whenever I get out of the vehicle, they yell, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." I have a 2-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old.
It's just so sad. And yes, Linn is innocent until proven guilty. He'll have an opportunity to present his defense. But at the end of the day, if this reporting is true, it is so senseless. This didn't need to happen. The business's post read, by the way, regarding this video, "From guiding customers to guiding kids, Matt Traywick brings heart and wisdom to everything he does. This Father's Day, we honor his role as both a proud dad and an invaluable part of our team." Back in 2021, the dealership posted a photo of Matthew with a big grin on his face, holding a cake that said 62 on it. The accompanying post said, "We are so incredibly proud of our sales professional, Matthew Traywick, for going above and beyond his goal for the month of June and selling 62 vehicles. Congratulations, Matthew." A family friend has set up a GoFundMe to help Matthew's widow, McGeough, and the 3 young kids. The amount raised has quickly soared to more than $130,000 as of Wednesday morning. It's pretty incredible. And the organizer wrote on the GoFundMe page, "Thank you so much to all that have donated and shared thus far. The overwhelming support within the last 24 hours is a restored faith in humanity after such a senseless tragedy. McGeough has an army of extended family and friends supporting her with daily tasks, kiddos, and essential needs meals for now. We will update you with any other needs as they arise." So right now, it is unclear if Linn and Matthew knew each other or whether they had any other kind of interaction before the argument or seemingly this argument over the parking spot. Court records seem to indicate that Linn is locked up without bail, that his first appearance in court is scheduled for January 29th, and hopefully, as this case progresses, we will get more information. But I want to tackle this right now from a different angle. So I want to try to make sense of this, if that's even possible. Let me bring in forensic psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Bober into the conversation. Doctor, thank you so much for taking the time. I can't sit here today and say this is the first time we've seen something like this. I mean, maybe most notably, I've covered it on Prime Crime, and maybe I think we did it on Sidebar too. I mean, there was the Michael Drake case out in Florida. You have disputes over parking lots, parking spaces. You have disputes all the time in convenience stores and movie theaters. It seems, and we don't know the whole circumstances of this. We don't know the fact pattern. But why do we, generally speaking, why do we see strangers getting into physical conflicts in these areas?
So this is really an act of reactive aggression. It's obviously associated with anger, possible deficits in cognitive control and emotional regulation. And really what it comes down to is a perceived slight or that you're being disrespected. This is something that we see all the time, as you said, but some people just have a completely disproportionate reaction. And when people become angry, their focus becomes more narrow. They lose their ability to problem solve, to disengage, to reinterpret, to step back. And when there's a presence of a firearm, there is a much higher chance that these confrontations can become lethal. So you have the scenario, the individual, and the presence of the firearm, which really are the perfect storm.
Do you feel like you're seeing more incidents like this in the last maybe 10 years? Do you feel like people might be on edge more in today's day and age? Do you think there's something going on that we should be thinking about?
I do. I do think that people are angrier, and there's this sort of hostile attribution bias where when you have a situation that may be ambiguous, people immediately jump to conclusions and their knee-jerk reflexes that this must be hostility towards me. I am being targeted. And I think that makes people lose their cool much quicker.
Now, assuming he did this for a minute, if you were to interview somebody who was involved in a allegedly a physical altercation like this, a violent altercation like this, do they even remember what happened, or does their mind go blank, given the trauma of that event, given how fast something like this happens? What's their recall like? Because you always wonder in cases like this, and again, it's such an early stage, but if someone were to claim self-defense or someone were to try to explain their side of it, do they accurately recall what happened?
Often, no, they don't. When all those hormones and neurotransmitters are flowing, adrenaline, they don't have an accurate recall of the situation. But when I speak to someone like this, what I would want to know is, was there a prior relationship between the alleged assailant and the victim? Were they under the influence of substances? Was there a prior history of violence? Had they been diagnosed with a mental illness? These are all questions I would want to know.
Well, as far as Linn, we talked about this military background before. There's a person who apparently claims that they witnessed what happened, claimed that Linn immediately removed the magazine from the gun, placed it on the car. We don't know if that's true, but assuming that is for a minute, it's very procedural. It's a very interesting reflex from wonder, is it from military training? What do you make of that? And by the way, he remained at the scene apparently.
So military training is certainly a risk factor. I don't think that he was deployed, although I could be wrong.
He wasn't.
But so I do think from a training perspective, when people, that's the whole point of military training, right? When people are under stressful situations, they fall back on their training. They fall back on a procedure. So it does seem very procedure-like, if you will, the way he reacted. And certainly that's a risk factor.
For sure. If you had the opportunity to interview him, what would you want to know about his past? What would you want to know about his military training and his time in the military?
So obviously, we know he wasn't deployed. I would want to know what his specialty was in the military. Did he go through any problems during basic training? Any history of combat stress? Any history of prior conflict while he was going through training? Any problems with, oppositionality, problems with authority? These are all questions I would be asking.
And to be clear about something, those who served or veterans It's not like they go out and do things like this. And he's innocent until he's, until proven guilty. But do you see episodes where people who have served in the military or veterans of some kind, that they have somehow been involved in violent altercations? Or is it, hey, you know what? They're like anybody else who gets into violent altercations. You can't just say it's one segment of the population, but it's a part of the conversation here, his background. It's being reported about for a particular reason. Do you see people with that background, have they experienced violent episodes in public and civilian life?
I do. I've worked extensively in the Veterans Administration system and with active duty service members, and especially ones who've been deployed or exposed to combat stress, who've had military training. Definitely people who have a history of trauma may be more likely to react much quicker and not think the situation through. So through no fault of their own, because of their service to their country and the fact that they put their lives at risk to protect our freedom, very often they do get post-traumatic stress, which can cause them to react quicker in these types of situations without thinking it through.
It's being reported that Matthew's children, who apparently are very young, they may have been present during the shooting. Now, what they saw, what they heard, not entirely clear, but if they were present, if they saw this, are they going to remember what happened? And what do we know about how violence impacts someone that young? Violence impacting someone that young whose father is now deceased. I mean, what should we be thinking about there?
So it really depends on the ages of the children. It depends on what they actually saw. Were they in the car when it happened? Were they on the other side of the car? Did they actually witness his death, him being shot? Genetic factors, prior experience. Most kids, as a rule, are resilient and will, but certainly a situation like this will put them at much higher risk for acute stress or post-traumatic stress disorder.
How does this family move forward?
One day at a time. Trauma, grief is a process. It's not an on and off switch. You never go back to the quote unquote normal. It's a new normal. And I think they're just going to have to take it one day, sometimes 1 hour at a time.
Do you think there will be, and again, it's still early stages, we're still trying to piece together. Do you think, though, there will be a mental health evaluation as part of the legal case?
Oh, almost certainly. I think there will be a mental health evaluation. And, it may play into a potential defense strategy, whether he's offered a plea. But I definitely think a mental health evaluation will be part of it.
How does it work? Would the defense try to seek a mental health evaluation, and that's then rebutted by the prosecution's own experts? Talk to me about how sometimes that plays out in cases like this.
So I believe the defense can request it. Actually, the judge can request it. And I think, early on, looking at how this is playing out, I think a mental health defense or mental health will play into the defense.
But to be clear, I mean, if he remained at the scene, that seems to be an acknowledgement of what happened and that he'd done something wrong. I mean, allegedly, right? I mean, the other way of looking at it is if you're dealing with a situation, I'm not saying insanity's on the table or that's even relevant here, but they talk about, a clear example, somebody commits a crime and they just hang out because they didn't even realize what happened. Now, that doesn't seem to be the case here, but if you're talking about somebody who remains at the scene, that could complicate mental health defenses in some way, right?
Well, it all depends on how you tell the story, right? If he's at the scene, you could interpret that as, it's an acknowledgement of guilt. But then you could say if he flees the scene, that's an acknowledgement of guilt. It all depends on how you take the same set of facts and how you tell the story.
Such a sad case. Such a sad case.
Horrific, tragic.
Trying to make sense of it. I guess the one thing I'll ask is, and again, we don't know all the details here. We don't know all the circumstances, but people get into conflicts all the time. There's what we call fight or flight, right? What would you recommend to people because it's very tough to look up in hindsight and say how someone should respond or how they should react. And, emotions are running wild if there's an altercation. Do you advise patients in some way? Do you advise people in some way about what they should do if they find themselves in a potentially violent altercation, or let me say this, an altercation that could escalate into physical violence? What would you recommend?
So obviously firearms are a political hot button issue, but I don't look at it from a political standpoint. I look at it from a public health standpoint. When you have a situation like this, and when you have firearms in your home or in your car, and there's a confrontation like this, there is a much higher probability of lethality just by the mere presence of the firearm. If you talk to people and you tell them, don't make your firearm so accessible, that's going to basically tell them, they're basically going to say that defeats the purpose of having a firearm, right? They want to have it ready to go during an armed confrontation. But there are certain people that may be more reactive, that may fly off the handle, that may not think it through, and those are probably not people that should have firearms. And this is something I see in the hospital with my patients all the time. I have people coming in and they're involved in a confrontation, or they come in holding a gun to their head, and we have to remove their firearms from them because they shouldn't have them. So I would say you have to look at the temperament of the individual, and is this someone that you really want having a firearm? Because people should have the right to have them, but not everyone should have them.
Dr. Daniel Bober, thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.